What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you for checking out this episode of the Keep Klimbing podcast. It's been a minute.
We're back.
We're back, baby. We're back. We're back and cooking, and baseball season is in full swing. I'm having a great time. I know you're having a great time. My allergies are not having a great time. I'll tell you that. Gotta puff my inhaler every once in a while, which is no good. But baseball season's back. We got all kinds of people for us, at Premier, all different levels, like out. Dealing with good performances, dealing with, some hiccups, dealing with some bang ups, and that's all part of the process. It's all part of that process. And, this topic we wanted to talk about today, I think is a very, very deep topic for where we're at in baseball today and baseball evaluation. That, the topic is pitch execution and what it takes probably to be successful at your level versus, evaluation metrics and opportunities for the next level. That sometimes those things gel up really good. Sometimes there's some differences in those things. And yeah. I think the baseball player in me, says, win the game, limit runs, limit damage, all those things, and all those things are certainly true. And then the, performance evaluator, next level opportunities, scout side of me says, there's a certain kind of criteria that recruiters or scouts are kind of coming to see that is more about projectability and less about like performance on like said given day. Now, those things can blend and gel really good. And to be honest with you, in most cases they should, because at the end of the day, if you've got performance metrics to be successful at the next level, you certainly should be experiencing some level of success at your level, But the reality is you can be experiencing a very high level of success at your current level and not be getting the attention for the next opportunities that you feel you may have earned on the field, Yeah. And look, I've had my own life experiences with that, that at every step of the way, from youth baseball to high school baseball to college baseball, pro baseball, all the way to the major leagues, that, unfortunately, it's not always the players that perform the best between the white lines that are always the ones that get that opportunity for the next level. That's a really hard pill to swallow for baseball players. So very specifically in the high school realm, I think that aspect is what I want to spend most of the time talking about today. I think it's more applicable to a lot of people, especially viewer base that we have, but I also want to zoom back or, zoom out and sit back and also just say that this happens at every level. Okay.
I believe that.
I was in AAA in 2019 and had my average velocity that year was 92.9, no roundups, 92.9. Okay, had the best professional.
We'll go 93.
Season. Yeah, had the best professional season I'd ever had. I was pitching out of the bullpen. Okay, and through August had a sub-2 ERA. Gave up some runs and the last month of the season, whatever, probably ended somewhere in the mid-2s, but a very successful season for me. My walks were a little high, my strikeouts were really high, and obviously kept runs off the board for my team, and got told that I basically just didn't throw hard enough to be in the back end of a major league bullpen for the team. So yeah, really tough pill for me to swallow, especially at 27 years old.
You're like,
not expecting to jump 4 miles an hour at 27 years old, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a hard pill to swallow. That happened to me. That's happened to me at other different stages of my career, certainly too. But that I know it's a really hard thing for, especially the younger the player gets, maybe to wrap their head around what evaluators are looking for and the differences that maybe has on you, your performance, and the way you approach the game or your training, then necessarily like what is gonna give you the most success for that year, which is a tough thing maybe to juggle.
There's so many threads, I think, in this conversation. That's the thing, and where you're starting. And I think as you're talking about high school level, and just for an example, for folks to understand something. Mm-hmm. And I picked this one team because we were looking at this the other day, and this was an interesting conversation. One of the better teams in the metro area, which is Lindbergh. Mm-hmm. We have them ranked very high. I'm looking, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 pitchers, 8 of which have 7+ innings
Okay.
of work.
Yep.
All right, which is pretty decent.
Yep.
Okay. The one name that stands out is Jack Polite.
Okay.
Okay. He's carrying the most innings. But what stood out to me is of these 8 pitchers, nobody is over a 4 ERA in high school.
Mhm.
So to me, you're talking about a really good pitching staff.
Yep.
But how many of these kids? I mean, Jack Polite, I think, is a mid-80s pitcher.
Yep.
And nobody else, I think, is in that. So it isn't what you would, as you talk about that prospect,
Yeah.
which is really just a handful of guys.
Yep.
So, a lot of these kids, how are they able, we go, oh my gosh, you're not throwing 90. How do you have a 1.37 ERA?
Yeah.
And that's
Well, at
the
the end
point,
of the
right?
day, yeah, I mean, that's the difference between pitching and executing, and the difference between, what some people would label people that are throwers, right?
Mhm.
That have, really good stuff and maybe less pitchability, that you can be a really high pitchability person. And
Right.
and really, I'm going to tell you, it's relative to, the levels for sure, right? Like
Yeah.
the certain like prereq for success, in high school, college, pro, or whatever level we're talking about, obviously like goes up. But you can have a really high pitchability, and have a really great season, like where you're at, and not get any love for the next level. And that's kind of what I said before. And that's certainly true about this, is that like at the end of the day, I tell a lot of the like high school players and parents that like, man, if you can throw strikes consistently,
Right.
be 0-1, win your 1-1 counts, stay out of 3-ball counts, and you can throw any type of off-speed pitch that's got a decent amount of separation from your fastball, meaning it's either moves way more, trajectory, or the velocity difference is way different. That can be a changeup, that can be a slider, that can be a curveball, any type of off-speed pitch. I really believe you can have extreme success in Missouri high school baseball, really in any state high school baseball.
Yeah.
I don't mean to just limit that to Missouri.
Sure.
And I also think that like, let's run through some statistics of that real quick, because I think some people say, oh yeah, like I'm a strike thrower, and they don't have enough like actual execution data to justify it. They just think, well, I don't like walk people, and I don't hit people, and or whatever, which certainly are things that we'd look at, but being in 2-1 counts, being able to throw strikes with your fastball, but also just not like just hit the box, because if they're just pump middle strikes, then that's different. If you can move the ball like up, down, or in, out, kind of depending on what your fastball like profile looks like, right? Like good 4-seam guy, you'd like to use the zone more this way, and a 2-seam guy, you'd like to use the zone more this way. So, I think that if you take a 2-seam guy, for example, if you cut the zone in half and you can get to the arm side of the plate when you want to, about 50 to 60% of the time, and get to your glove side when you want to about 50, 60% of the time, like that's executing your fastball. Pitch execution metrics, when we look at, major league caliber pitchers with like elite command stuff, even those pitchers are only in the zone, 50 to 60% of the time. The topic or the concept gets thrown around often of like, oh, I'm throwing too many strikes, which I think can be true. You get a lot of guys in swing mode. I've felt that at times. But I think it also probably comes down to like quality strikes, So
Yeah.
maybe I'll amend my statement. If you can throw quality strikes, with your fastball, and have any type of off-speed pitch with some moderate to good separation off your fastball, and throw that for strikes, meaning like in a 2-1 count, every single time that you face me in a 2-1 count's not just a guaranteed fastball.
Mhm.
And then even when I do throw a fastball in that count, I don't feel like I got to pump it right down the heart, for me to be able to feel confident I'm going to throw a strike. I can still try to, throw it to a side of the plate or whatever, right? And holy cow, you do that. I don't care if you throw 80, 78. I don't care if you throw 92. Like you that's pitchability, right? Like
Right.
that's your ability to change speeds, that's your ability to change, eye levels, and then having any type of off speed pitch that I can throw in a count, um, where you might be thinking of fastballs coming. I think at really at any level, right? Like I think maybe the 78 to 80 guy, like not necessarily in the SEC, you know what I'm saying,
Right.
or in pro ball, right?
Understand.
Like it's
Right.
all relative, but like
Right.
you can pitch in the SEC at 87 and still do all that
I've
stuff.
seen it.
I've seen it plenty. I've played with
Yes.
plenty of guys, that have done that. And vice versa for the hitters, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like if you put the bat on the ball, if you are tough with two strikes, if you can hit the ball to all fields, and you're not driving gaps, and you're not doing, I've seen guys hit 300 in SEC that do all that didn't get much of an opportunity in professional baseball because of the projectability aspect of that, so yeah, for the high school population, pitchers specifically, because it's more of what I know and more of what I've seen, that like those are some of my core beliefs about high school pitching, that if you're just trying to go out and be the best high school pitcher that you can be,
Yeah.
you do those things, you're going to have success on the field, no doubt. Where I think what we do in some of our company, and most of the players that we help and serve, they're all doing that so that they can get an opportunity to go to college.
Right.
So you have to kind of, the unfortunate piece of it is that, which I felt as a player, is that the evaluation of your performance, is very metrically driven, and there's a lot of subjectivity in scouting and recruiting and guesses on if this player is gonna do well or continue to grow or improve, like for the next level success. That those are the things that they're looking at, because they know that those things typically, from a statistical standpoint, you know tend to have more success once they get to that level, right?
Right.
Like you wouldn't take a guy and expect him to have success in a Division I environment that has like a 80 to 83 mile an hour fastball and can throw three different off speed pitches for a strike, because at the end of the day, the stuff wise probably just can't compete with that level of hitters, right? But again, that whole conversation is like relative to like that certain competition level, that the way that would play out is that, like, yeah, I mean, you can go watch the ACC, the SEC. There's a lot of good college baseball going on right now. You can go watch a lot of that, and you can see guys that are throwing on Friday nights, that are throwing, left-hander throwing 94 at NC State, and he's striking a bunch of people out, and he's getting a ton of like draft love. You can find a guy on the same dang pitching staff that's throwing 87 with a really good slider and some type of third pitch, and he's in the zone, and he's having just as much, if not more, success. So it doesn't necessarily matter for like that levels of success.
Right.
It's more about like the opportunity for the next level. And I think, again, that I've lived that of balancing that as the player is extremely hard to do from an
Mentally,
emotional,
right?
yeah, mental and emotional
Yeah,
standpoint.
man.
That man, you have to be able to like get on the mound, nothing else matters, I'm getting this guy out type of attitude, and what I used to say, this is kind of maybe what I said to myself for a while, and now I say it to everybody else, is that, like, typically as a starter in that environment, and it's different for a reliever, I get, but like the analogy I think can be, seeing how it can apply, that like I was gonna pitch for one day, and it didn't, nothing else matters. One day I was gonna hit the glove and trust everything that I was doing, and then 6 days I was gonna work and build my velocity up and build my strength up, and then the one day, like, go pitch, man, because you can't really, the reality is like on the day that you pitch, you can't really change anything. You know what I mean?
No,
You
no,
can
it
change
is
it
what it
through the
is.
months and the days and the weeks of the work, but the day that you go out and pitch, man, hit the glove, execute, and because the reality is, if you go out on the mound, you start thinking about what they want to see, then your stuff's probably not going to get any better. You're probably going to overthrow, actually, which makes command go down. Velocity typically doesn't increase when you just try to throw harder. You can't just try to throw harder. Um, can't try to make the slider like break more. You can't try to do any of that. It's kind of like a culmination of all the work that you've been doing. So that I think the better mental approach to all of that, if that's something that you're wanting to do and do better on, like, it's one day go pitch, 6 days go work. One day go pitch, 6 days go work. You know what I mean? And I think too often everybody's just so focused on the one day at pitch that they lose some of the thoughts on the 6 day at work. But then too, like in the one day of work, you can't be thinking about the one day of pitch, you can't be thinking about any
The
other
work.
metric, stuff that just kind of clouds your brain, takes your focus off of
Right.
holding the runners, off of, reading the swings, off of the pitch sequence that you're trying to execute, and ultimately
Is my seam orientation correct?
Yeah,
No,
you ain't
yeah,
thinking about all
forget
that. Heck no. It is what it is that day, and the mentality is. I'll tell you, this is the key. The mentality is that when I go out there and on that day, I don't care about any of that. Whatever I got today is good enough to beat you.
That's right.
That's where it comes.
You can't hit me.
And hey, look, I'm telling you what. That's easy to do when all things are going good. The challenge is you get punched in the mouth a few times, a few games, a few innings in a row, that you can still come out that next pitch or that next pitch mentality that I'm still coming just the same way that I was before. And that's hard to do, man. That's hard to do.
And so with this particular thread, I think the one thing that's interesting to me, and as thinking about this conversation, Youth Baseball Midwest, I always, when we talk about what we're looking at and what we're doing, I'm not a talent evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that guy.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at baseball as the sport itself, high school baseball, elementary, middle school kids.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at youth baseball in that respect, and just having fun watching baseball, giving people that opportunity to watch a good high school baseball game.
Yeah.
And on one day, you have a couple kids that you've never heard of, out there throwing. And I think that's the majority, because you're an evaluator, you look at those things. That's the very small percentage.
Yeah.
Then you have that next level of kids that maybe are in that and
trying to fight their way into it, probably.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the majority of these kids who, what do they do? How do they get there? And I don't know, myself personally looking at, this isn't a derogatory statement toward anybody or anything.
Yeah.
It's not. But I think there's a lot of these kids that you see, and these kids have evidently figured it out.
Yeah.
Here's Adler Krass. Now, I don't know what kind of pitcher he is.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him. I know the name. I've heard about him. Mm-hmm. But he's got a .43 ERA in 16 and a third innings. Right?
That's awesome.
That's doing pretty good.
I don't care what his stuff looks like. That's awesome,
And so that's the point, with this conversation. If you want to be a good high school pitcher, what are you doing to set yourself in motion? Mm-hmm. You may only be 150 pounds right now, mm-hmm. and that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't grow 6 inches at 19 and be able to throw harder at that time. But what are you doing right now to maximize your potential as a pitcher? And I don't know that we talk about that enough.
Yeah. Well, I think the dynamic of what you just described is true at every single level. Right? There's that like top kind of 1 or 5%, whatever you want to call it, that like is getting all the love and the attention about how good he's going to be at the next level. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's happening right now from a high school standpoint, kids that might get drafted or go to a Division I school. It's happening in college, the same kids that might get drafted and be a first or second or third rounder, And then there's another population of people who are kind of like a tier 2 in that are trying to fight their way up into that thing as much as they can, and they're fighting, scratching and clawing and do everything that they can. And then there's the bigger percentage of people that are at the bottom of that can still perform exceptionally well at the level that they're at and not be getting that love, and be a fantastic high school pitcher, be a fantastic college pitcher that with a little bit more time, with a little bit, maybe training program or thoughts about a training program, could still develop into those people, or into those categories that ultimately, like, your opportunity at the next level means absolutely nothing about what happens in the game today. I think that's the big picture point, right? That like, and I think that, like, we all like to talk about it. Baseball likes to talk about it. We like to see the guys that are like throwing hard and they get the buzz. The newspaper comes out.
We like the pitching matchups.
Yeah, no doubt. But I'll tell you, the best teams, the best teams are the ones that have the deeper pitching staffs that can go win games like Lindbergh. That there's not some big drop off from your one or two guy to the next
Right,
guys.
right.
You know, and that's what makes good teams, and that's what coaches care about. That's what the game cares about. Because like in that moment, and whoever winds up like winning a state championship this year, or even just maybe outperforming, through the playoffs, maybe what the rankings or what they're like what the thoughts about the
Right.
people
Yes.
are usually comes down to depth,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing's true at every single level, because the game today doesn't care about the opportunity you've got for the next level. And I'll actually say most of the time for your top prospect guys or your higher recruit guys or whatever, like everybody, you come in with a target on your back. Everybody knows the love that you're getting, and I've been on both sides of that fence where it's like I want to beat this guy's butt. You know what I mean? Because everybody thinks he's great. Well, watch this. You know what I mean? And that's great. It fuels people. It should.
Yeah.
It should. That's
That's
awesome.
competition.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. That should happen.
Yeah.
But I've been the guy. That's got to go face the big name guy or all-star guy or the home run leader in the SEC or like whatever. And yeah, absolutely. Like I was thinking about that. It's like, okay, watch this, buddy. Like you're gonna have to still get a hit today. I don't care what they wrote about you or they said about you in ESPN or what they think about you in the newspaper or like whatever, because it makes no difference on the game today, right?
And at some point, you're in that game and you're in that
Yeah.
moment, and you start feeling that adrenaline. You say, okay, here's
Yeah.
my fastball. Let's see what you
Absolutely.
got, bro.
And so those guys that are in that, and really it's everybody, but those guys that are in that, man, like the work or the pitch one day, work 6 days kind of attitude, or even if you're hitting, like, man, none of that matters. And you have to have such a, here and now attitude that I'm going to go out, do everything I can to execute and play to the best of my ability today. And if you just keep doing that every single day, you'll look up eventually and like where you're at, or at least like what you've been able to achieve. Because it's all relative, man. Like what I think and find more cool is the guy that was like maybe floating in the middle of that maybe didn't believe in himself all that much, and really dedicated himself and worked hard and got him an opportunity just to go play college baseball anywhere. Anywhere that had to overcome like a lot of adversity, had to like really grow and learn and develop, and was competing against guys who at the end of the day just kind of like woke up better than him. Because that happens,
Right.
that man,
Yeah,
I've felt like that
kidding.
myself, where it's like,
Right.
man, I'm like fighting and scratching and clawing. I feel like I'm swimming upstream here, doing everything that I can, and then this other dude rolls into the clubhouse and he's just like stayed up till 4 a.m. playing video games and like did whatever, and he's just insane. It happens, and all of it, like talent's all very, fluctuates, so
buddy.
yeah, I mean, I find some more, we all like and enjoy the guy that's got the dirty jersey every single game, and you know what I'm saying, like
dirt bag.
yeah, no doubt, had to fight for what he's got. And there's way more, in my opinion, to be said for that guy and the sense of fulfillment he should feel and what he was able to accomplish, even if he went to a small school that you've never even heard of. That to me should have more of a sense of accomplishment than, your top prospect guy who threw 92 as a sophomore and was getting all this love and went to some Division I school and maybe fizzled out because he wasn't like a high achiever, high work ethic, high whatever type of guy, that ultimately he got those opportunities just because of like, how tall or big he was, how his arm worked or whatever, that he didn't really have to do as much as that other guy did. There should be such a
He fits certain criteria.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think you start getting into this like comparison game, you can lose a lot of that joy in this game.
I always go back to the trivia question: who was the 06 Cardinals World Series
David
MVP?
Eckstein.
David Eckstein.
Yeah.
It wasn't Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And what David Eckstein.
Yeah.
Who probably, definitely wasn't the most talented guy.
Yeah. Right.
But just,
I mean, every step of the way that guy
Right.
had to like fight upstream to get his opportunity, and he stuck with it. And there's plenty of people, there's plenty of great stories like that even to this day. I think I think the way that we evaluate baseball players these days, there's a whole lot less David Ecksteins getting opportunities, which is
I agree.
unfortunate,
I agree.
because look, I'll tell you, I've been the person too. Go back to that environment, and like I just wanted every player really just wants to be evaluated with what happens on the field, and it's a really troubling feeling when there's just nothing really else I can do about it. They want something that's different than me
Yeah.
to be on their team for the next opportunity, that I feel like I'm doing everything that I can right now to get the opportunity that I long for. That ultimately, that's the flaw though, is that like you have to be doing it, I think, from a sense of um, um,
Your
pride's
own,
not the right word. Like your sense of like fulfillment or your definition of success,
being confident in
is
yourself.
yeah, and just trying to be the best that you can be
Yeah,
that day, and not letting
absolutely.
other labels or opportunities dictate what you think about yourself as a
Right.
baseball player,
Right.
because that's really like deflating. That's
I
really
agree.
deflating, and I think ultimately then just like curbs your development. It also probably makes you play less than. I'll tell you another quick story. So in A ball, my first year in professional baseball, my velocity and my stuff kind of took a back step out of me leaving Mizzou. Okay, and that's not all that uncommon for pitcher going into their first experience with professional baseball, going from a 7 day a week starting to 5 days, pitching way more throughout the whole year. I threw my total amount of innings in June that I had thrown the previous year, and I still had July and August and some of September to pitch then, right? Like, I had a long way to go, and I just felt tired. Well, the beginning of that season, we had some, I had some wins. I probably didn't deserve to be an all-star, but I was an all-star that first year, and pitched well. ERA was too high, like I said, probably to like really be an all-star, but because of the dynamics of our team, someone had to make it, type of thing. So I did. And I think I went like, something and to start the season, whatever. Like like was executing fine. Okay. I don't get an opportunity for a call up, and looking back now, like I understand why, but in the moment, I was kind of like, man, like everybody else I was just on this team with, like they're in high A now. And then you spend your whole life in the minor leagues just wishing you were at the next level up. And that, that kind of sucks. I think be where your feet are, and,
Instead of being
enjoy that
in the
time.
moment.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
And so I started pitching to that, started trying to throw harder, started trying to do something different, had a horrendous second half, you know, giving up hits, homers, walks, you name it, because I wasn't pitching to the game anymore. I was pitching to the evaluators. And that's just so toxic. You can't do that. You can't change anything like that in the moment.
That
And
person can't exist in the stands for you. You're
absolutely,
competing
it's you
against
and
the
them.
guy in
Yeah,
the
I was
box.
yeah. And if other players or people, because that's at any level, if you start to pitch to anything other than the hitter that's in the box, you're going to get beat. You're going to get beat, and your performance is also going to go down. You have to be who you are, own who you are, hit the mitt, enjoy where you're at, work hard. And if you are thinking or pitching for anything else, playing for anything else, like, your performance is going to deteriorate, and I see and can understand that now, looking at it from more of a 30,000-foot view and my own personal experiences. But I know that there's some kids out there right now, at this high school level, that are thinking about that, because they're 2025s
Yes.
that are still uncommitted, and they want nothing more than to go play college baseball somewhere. And man, my advice is just like, be who you are, keep doing what you're doing, and continue to find ways to continue to progress and grow. And you have to understand like where you're at from a metric standpoint. You have to build a plan to, improve that, certainly, but it's not something you do actually while your feet are on the mound.
Okay. So I want to, because this is my thought process and how I want to bring you to this place of how do we take this thread this way. You got a freshman, a sophomore, a junior,
Mm-hmm.
Even the senior, okay, does have the aspirations. I think it's very difficult to learn how to narrow your focus and bring it into its proper perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you say to that kid who is at 75 miles an hour,
Mm-hmm.
78 miles an hour?
Yep.
whatever the case may be, maybe not understanding how to throw the off speed that he has
Mm-hmm.
in the way he wants to, but he wants to improve and whatnot. How do you set them in motion, Brett?
Yeah.
And if he's only got so much to deal with and things like that, I know there's programs. What
Sure.
are some of the things you would say to this kid to help them continue to progress?
Yeah. I think that when you take the ball and you go out there, you be the best version of yourself that you are right then.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You go out and, to be honest with you, hit the mitt. Execute your pitch as often as you can. Develop a good sequence. And what I mean by that is, like, you understand that where my fastball plays and where I'm trying to throw it, like, because I also think that if you just go out and hit the mitt and I just try to throw fastballs down on the way the whole time and I try to throw it, breaking ball to strike him out every single time, like, that's also not good. You know what I mean? You can't, that's where, like, the pitchability side of it comes in, being able to throw off-speed pitches for strikes and fastball counts, being able to throw fastballs, to different areas of the zone. It's less predictable, not having too much of a tendency or biases to, certain handed hitters, like go pitch, go hit the mitt, throw good sequences, don't be predictable, right? And then away from the competitive environment, you need to be understanding where your metrics are from a range of motion, from a mechanics, from a ball flight, from a performance standpoint. Those are all the things that we assess and measure for players. And then, we do a really good job of maybe layering it over players or levels of players that they want to get to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And understand how they stack up to those different people, players, and, like, essentially what those college level players do that they don't do. Right? Then build a training program and a development approach to help you build those things. And those things look very different, during certain months of the year. Every single month of the year, the training objectives or the development objectives fluctuate a little bit, right?
Sure.
This month of April, I guess it's May now. This month of May, like, would look entirely different than what it's going to look like in June, because your high school season's over. Right. It's going to look even different in July, even just going from, like, maybe, summer team, club team, whatever you're doing, from June to July, because of overall, like, workload volume. Is it the most amount of innings you've ever thrown? How's your body feeling? How's your arm feeling? How many pitches did you throw in your last outing? Like, it's all very fluid, then those things look very different than October objectives, and those things look very different than January objectives. And that's what we try to help players with and build those plans for, because, I mean, even your most seasoned, professional players probably still have a more limited understanding of that entire process. That's like what a really good trained coach and exercise science, like, background, like, helps our coaches do for players, that I felt like when I was 25, 26, 27 and still playing, and I had a pretty good beat on that. And I feel like I look back now and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I probably have a decent beat on it relative to the other players that I was around, but I've learned so much, like, since then, that I wish I could go back and tell myself at 25, that, would just have an impact, so yeah, I mean, be the best version of yourself that you can be when you take the ball, right? Go pitch, hit the mitt, change speeds, throw strikes, work fast, have fun. Those are the main things. But then away from the field, build a development plan that's maybe a little bit more zoomed out of where you are now, where you want to go, and what are some things I really need to focus on to get me there, and all of those different, like, assessment areas that we do are ultimately the reason we assess them, is because they're the performance data, sets that help players kind of improve and build that engine to, then because I mean, from a training standpoint, like, if you just train, it's all very incomplete of what you do on the field, because taking what you're working on in training, what we were talking about earlier, and actually applying it to on-field success is where I think a lot of,
The
training facilities or coaches or whomever, like, really get this wrong, or just a lack of maybe understanding, is that, like, bridging the gap from that is really all that matters. I tell so many of our players, man, if the best bullpen or the highest velocity or whatever, that you throw this whole year is on February 16th, you know, in you know, at Premier, like that we did something wrong. You know what I mean? We did something wrong.
Yeah.
And you know, our goal for all of them, you know, our like Premier pitching performance way that we try to teach people, you know, like our core values, you know, is like assess, prescribe, train, and the last one is win. Because if it doesn't result in them winning on the field, which winning can mean a lot of different things, but success on the field, like that's the process, right?
Yeah.
Assess where you are, where you want to go, and what areas, KPIs, things do we need to focus on to get there. We prescribe certain drills, exercises, initiatives for certain calendar months of the year to help build a plan to get there. And then we train like heck, you know, we train like heck and we go at it with you know, high energy, high effort, high accountability, you know, and then we keep kind of going through that, and then it's got to result on-field success. Otherwise, all of it was
doesn't matter.
You know, it doesn't matter.
And the last thing with this too, and I think this is the hardest thing because what we talked about earlier, you know, velocity is king right now, and we understand it, and I get it plays. I don't get me wrong. People think, you know, oh Brian, you're velocity. No, we understand what as you said, you know, but each level in its place.
Sure.
You're throwing 75 as a sophomore. Don't try and think about 85.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 10 miles an hour. Sure. That's hard.
Yeah.
And I don't care. You know, it's funny to me. I always find it fascinating. Stand in a batter's box and let somebody throw 75 miles an hour at you.
Yeah.
It's faster than what you think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so then there's ways to do that. If you've set your goals and what you're setting up there, I don't think there isn't any trainer who said if you can get 3 more miles an hour out of yourself in a year, you're doing pretty well, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we just put out some statistics actually the other day. Let me pull it up. It's basically like group averages for our high school population, and the average velocity increase for all of our guys, every single player that was in the program that did a pre and a post assessment, because there were some that we didn't collect. Sure. That's the addendum here, but it's over 55 guys. Okay, so it's a big group.
So that's not a small sample.
Yeah, the average velocity increase was 3.3 miles per hour.
Boom.
Okay, it ranged from 0 all the way up to 9.
Okay, 9's a huge
jump. Yeah, and to be honest with you, to me, there's red flags in 0 and there's red flags in 9 too. You know, because jumping that much in velocity is just a lot more added stress that the frame and the body may not be ready to handle. Right. You know, but you know, some important statistics that are on here. You know, some relative strength increase numbers, some relative force numbers. What we put out there is that, yeah, I mean, I get billboard wise, everyone really cares, us too. You know, that the work that we're doing produces, you know, results on the mound, which ultimately produces results on the field, right? And opportunities for the next level. Sure. That's what we're trying to help people do. But it's really important to me that all of these metrics are associated with that, because the reason that happens is because all 55 of those people, their average. So what we measure is the group IMTP peak force. IMTP stands for isometric mid-thigh pull. Okay, it's really just like a deadlift, but it's a test like that where you're just pulling a bar. Okay, it went up 315 newtons on average across the entire population that we did there. Right, and it's like, okay, Brett, what's that mean? That would be like saying the group average increase on their deadlift, the pounds of force went up 70 pounds for each player on average.
That's huge.
That's awesome, right? It's like going from a 330 to 400 is what I tweeted, you know, like that's a huge improvement. That's on average amongst all of those players.
That's impressive.
That's how you get there. The outcome, and that's one of the biggest things I think a lot of people need to understand. We all have outcome goals. I already know what your outcome goals are. You know, you want to throw harder, you want to throw strikes, you want to stay healthy. Well, okay, we need process-oriented goals. This calendar month of the year, what do I need to do right now to get to that goal? Right? Process-driven goals of like, well, what's the first step or 2 or 3 for me to go from 75 to 85? Like, you can't be thinking about going to 85. But I'll tell you what you think about is that you can think about getting, you know, your IMTP numbers up. So the other one was a CMJ jump height, which is really just a relative force metric for like a vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And that went up 2.57 centimeters, which again means nothing. But like the entire group,
Yeah,
right?
that's
like those
huge.
are the numbers that are going up that ultimately produces, because the force and the strength and the engine is going up to help produce like metrics like that, and that the the percentage, the last metric that we had on here, all of the people who completed their pre and a post assessment, the percentage of people who saw fastball velo increases was 100%. Because we know if we focus on those things, the outcome goals are there. And I think that's big picture what the graphic was supposed to like present to people is that like we have outcome goals, they'll go up. We got to get our process goals dialed on what they are, and we see improvements on the process goals and the day-to-day things that we're working on. We will see improvements on the outcome goals, so.
And that's the point, guys. I think this is so important to understand. You sophomore, if you get to 78 as a junior, and maybe you're 79, 80 as a senior, but you've got a .43 ERA, or you're even at 2.5.
Yeah.
You're having success. Enjoy that. And not just that, but keep working, because if you want to, and I always think if you're going to go to college, and you want to play baseball in college, keep working at that. Yeah. Maybe you at all of a sudden you get an extra and your body puts on more weight and you're able to do more, because people mature at different stages in their lives. So, maybe as a sophomore in college, now you're throwing 85, 86, and you're really being able to do that. And you just don't know.
Yeah. Two different pieces of advice along those lines is if you're a guy throwing, 78 or whatever, you think it's too low relative to what you want to be doing, okay? And you don't even have a 2.5, you've got a 6 or a 7. Say you're not pitching at all, say you didn't have a good like experience, say the coach stopped trusting you, like whatever that is. You still, and if you're still sitting there saying like, oh, like I need to figure out how to throw 85 to be a good pitcher, okay? Yeah, if say you're at 78, like just focus on throwing 79 first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get there, get there.
Learn how to throw
and
a changeup.
And then when you get there, then throw 80,
Yeah.
And then throw 81, and like, that goal should be a very small incremental goal that, again, I'll go back to, like, doesn't actually happen when you're on the mound. It's a byproduct of what you do all the other 6 days of the week. Okay. So even if you're struggling, whether you're if you got a 2.5, it's probably a little easier to do and to be like, hey, I'm just going to keep being me because I'm having success if you got a 2.5 or a 0.4 especially, right? But even if you got a 6, 7, 8, 9 like ERA, you're not getting the innings that you want to see. Like the route for that isn't like, oh, I got to do something crazy and I got to throw, 83, make a 7-mile-an-hour jump or 5-mile-an-hour jump, right? One small incremental wins at a time,
And pitchability. I liked what you said earlier about that. Understanding what you're trying to do, how to construct an out. I don't think the art of pitching has been, I think it gets kind of left behind a little bit in the search for the velocity, which, like I said, I'm not against it, but don't lose the pitchability part of it in pursuit of the velocity.
Those would just be different calendar month of the year goals. And that's basically my second like piece here is that, like, if you want to see more of an immediate impact in your baseball performance, it's going to come through execution things in the month of May.
Right.
Like this process is for you to go from 78 to 85, if that's the example we're kind of throwing around here, but even say it's 85 to 92, I don't know, like it's all relative, right? Same thing. Like your best way to have the most obvious like adjustment from this week to the next week is going to come through pitch execution things, because you're not just going to be able to go and be like, oh shoot, my velocity's down, I need to go start working out a whole bunch more, and now I'm all sore and whatever else like for the game. You don't change it like that. It's going to change very slowly over time. That like a better goal would be to have like, okay, I'm at 78 right now, still when I get out there to the game, all I'm going to focus on is hitting the mitt, but the other 6 days of the week I'm going to focus on getting 79, or whatever, right? Like, and then even within that, I also think there's flaws in that. You can't just go out every single day and throw a long toss every single day and work out every single day, because then you're gonna, like you have to still follow like a periodized schedules that optimize high intensity days, but also maximize your recovery days, and understand how all those things fit together, because, you can't just go throw and throw and throw and throw and expect that your velocity is going to like go up. You're, either going to experience fatigue, performance is going to diminish, or potentially get hurt, so yeah, all those different things would be kind of the initial steps that you need to take to become a better pitcher. That, man, you want to make the most, the quickest, easiest way to improve in your baseball performance statistics and winning of the game, keeping runs off the board, minimizing damage for your team, all of those things that the team needs you to do right now. It's going to come through pitch execution things. And in the month of May, like, that's really all you should be focusing on anyways, so then you build a bigger picture plan.
We got to finish this, and I wanted to get here because we have a real time example of these things. What we're talking about. This is last week on Tuesday. Pitching matchup: Fort Zumwalt East, Timberland Wolves. Okay. Carter Hollingsworth on the mound. There was all kinds of scouts in the major league scouts. Because of Richie Swain for Timberland. Richie, we saw, was sitting anywhere from 89. I think he topped at 95, something like that. All right. Carter Hollingsworth on the other end, 81 to 84. All right. You think, oh man, nobody's. That game went 10 innings. And Timberland walked it off. But both pitchers, Carter Hollingsworth and Richie Swain, went 7 innings complete, 0 runs. Richie had 6 Ks. I think Carter had 4. Richie only gave up, I think, 3 hits, but he hit 3 batters. And I think he had 3 walks. Hollingsworth gave up 6 hits, walked a couple, struck out, I think 4. Wait a minute.
Perfect example.
And it's not, and we understand why Richie has the scouts in the stands, because of the velocity.
But it has no effect on that day's game.
It didn't. It was a fantastic baseball game.
Pitching's all about throwing strikes, working ahead, changing speeds, and not being predictable. And if you can do those things, to be honest with you, it really doesn't matter, because the velocity stuff's all like relative, right?
Yes.
That what velocity allows you to do is actually get away with more mistakes. And the reality is, we're not, from a pitch execution standpoint, and I said, even a major league pitcher is only going to execute his pitch like, at best, like 60% of the time. Right. So yeah, you throw a 17-year-old kid in that mix, like, you wouldn't expect him to do that. He could still, absolutely, and have games where they still do, but like, that's not necessarily what keeps the barrel off the ball. In those games, it definitely lets you get away with more things. It definitely speeds hitters up, especially for younger players who aren't used to seeing velocity like that. It definitely gives you an advantage, But I think the hardest thing for a lot of these hard throwers, experiencing success in St. Louis right now is, and I felt this myself, of like, once you get into an environment where your velocity is no longer the thing that has you maybe like head and shoulders above a competition level, then how do you get players out? Exactly. And I had to peel that all back and figure out actually what pitching was then. And that's the difference between a thrower and a pitcher. And no matter where any of these guys are at right now, they'll all have, their own experiences of like what it takes to get next level hitters out, because the I don't know, competition level just like rises, but at the end of the day, it's all still those same things that if you can do those things, even in a, like, this is what most like younger players too don't really get until they get the opportunity or see about it or experience it, is that, like, as far as like a baseball evaluators aren't looking for a pitcher to potentially go out for one game to have success. Baseball is a game where pluck any high school pitcher that we rattled off today and go throw him out there against the Cardinals lineup or anybody's lineup, right? For an inning or 2 or 3, like, they could buzz through that pretty quick. That's the way baseball is. They're picking people based off of things like that, off of like a much bigger sample size and projection and prediction based off of those things that, I've seen awesome pitchers come down and do rehab assignments against A-ball teams and they get
Lit
whacked
up.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I've seen people who are like, man, this dude, like, he doesn't have really anything to beat us. How are we in the 6th inning with 2 hits right now? And that's just baseball, it's just baseball because that's all it comes down to. Like, work ahead in the strike zone, you know, pitching to both sides of the plate, throwing some strikes with some off-speed pitches when, it's less predictable that you're going to do that. Because if you're, I don't care if you're throwing 95, if you're throwing fastballs every time it's like certain counts and whatever, you're just making it easier for the hitters to do that. That's not ultimately what dictates success, like within one game. It really
Right.
doesn't, within one at bat, one game or whatever. And a lot of these players, like this Lindbergh team that you're saying, like if that's what they're doing, and I know nobody on that staff and their stuff and whatever, but those statistics are awesome. And
Right.
and certainly would sit here and lead me to believe that the pitchability is probably pretty high. The pitch sequencing is probably pretty good. Their defense is probably pretty good.
Right.
That all those things play into
Yes, they do.
that game success
Yes.
for sure. So
Absolutely.
that's cool. So okay, guys, well, thank you for checking out this episode. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, a subscribe, drop any comments you got for us down in the comment section below. I'd love to have some conversation about any of it. We'll be back again hopefully here, not as long as it took us to get to this one.
All right.
But I appreciate you guys. Thanks for checking it out, and we'll see you next time.